recently heard the term monster kids, and what that refers to is kids who grew up in the 60s and 70s and were a little obsessed with monster movies. Well, that totally applies to me, and that brings us to today's episode. This is the Kazdoy Closet. I'm Kazdoy. That's my closet full of all the stuff that I love. And today, what happens when a daughter wants to follow in the footsteps of her father, but that involves bringing the dead back to life? Let's check it out. Today's film is Lady Frankenstein from 1971, 99 minutes long, in color, in English, and in Italian. More on that later on. But this is about Baron Frankenstein's daughter, Tanya, who recently became a surgeon, and she reunites with her father and wants to continue his experiments of bringing dead bodies back to life. The only actor I really recognize in this is Joseph Cotten, who starred in so many classic films like Citizen Kane, The Magnificent Ambersons, the great Hitchcock film Shadow of a Doubt, The Third Man. This is later in his career, and late in his career he did a lot of stuff. I mean, even stuff, TV shows like Love American Style and The Love Boat, things like that. The director I had never heard of. His name is Mel Wells. He often went under a pseudonym for some reason, but he was a Roger Corman protege, and he was in a film acting that I was really obsessed with as a kid, and that was Little Shop of Horrors, the original from 1960, the Roger Corman directed film. Why was I obsessed with this film? Just, it's so funny and offbeat, and it showed you could have like horror and comedy in the same thing. This thing was filmed like in 3 days, I think. Jack Nicholson has a very small part in it, very good part in it. But Mel Wells played Mr. Mushnick, the guy who owned the florist shop. He actually has more acting credits, about 108, than he does directing credits, which about 8 directing credits. He went to Europe to make a film and just kind of basically stayed there. So I think most, if not all, of his films were European productions. So, what did I expect when I sat down to watch Lady Frankenstein, which I had never heard of? Well, I expected the things that I love about Frankenstein, and basically got that. The Gothic style with the arched doorways and the ceilings. They shot it in a real castle in Italy, so they didn't have to do a whole lot of set design except for like the laboratory, things like that. There's secret passageways, there's candle lights, there's thunder and lightning, so definitely the Gothic feeling to it. There's also a monster, which is what I expected. The monster looks better in the film than he does here. Every time I look at this picture here, he looks like David McCallum from The Man from U.N.C.L.E. But he's got this giant bulbous head, and his face is all messed up. He's got one eye that's his normal eye and one that's kind of drooping down below. It looks kind of fake, but still pretty cool. And then we have several extreme close-ups of his face to creep you out. The actor who played the monster was 6'8", but once they put all the clothing and the shoes on him, he stood 9 feet tall. I also expected and got the usual tropes that belong to a Frankenstein film. There's talk about man playing God and whether he should be doing that or not. There are some grave robbers. In fact, the film starts off right away with the guys robbing a grave, so it doesn't waste any time getting to the story. And then, of course, the monster gets loose, and there are some villagers holding torches that are upset, trying to find the monster. It's kind of funny. It seemed like there were only about maybe a dozen villagers, so it looked like this was kind of a low-budget affair. I know it was filmed in about 10 days. Now, what I didn't expect from this film, and this might be getting into spoiler territory, this might ruin some surprises, so if you want to skip ahead to my rating of the film, you can. But I didn't expect so much nudity in this film. There's not a lot, but I was surprised. About 40 minutes in, the monster kills the Baron. He gets loose, and he's wandering through this park, and it's a really nice park. He's walking over this footbridge. It cuts to broad daylight right away from the castle. He walks over this footbridge, and then we see this couple in the grass, and they're really going at it, making out with each other, lying down. The guy has his shirt off but his pants on. The woman is completely nude. And by the way, all the women in this film are beautiful. So why he's partially clothed and she's completely nude, laying down in this park where obviously there's a lot of traffic going on. Anyways, the monster walks up. The guy freaks out. He runs away. The woman, the naked woman, is standing there screaming. The monster picks her up, walks her over to the lake, and throws her in the lake. Sort of an homage to the original Frankenstein film, where that famous scene where the monster throws a little girl in the lake to see if she'll float. Later on, a couple scenes later, there's a couple of fishermen standing over by the lake with this kind of funny dialogue where they talk to each other. They say, "Boy, isn't it great to be fishing on a Sunday afternoon? Hey, what's that?" And they see this naked woman lying there halfway out of the lake. So then they call the authorities, and then the detective gets involved. So that was one thing I was surprised at, to see the nudity in this film, 1971. I guess they wanted to push the boundaries there. The other thing that surprised me about this was kind of this weird sexual theme going on. Now, Tanya is Lady Frankenstein, the daughter. She's just become a surgeon. We know that because they say it like 10 times in this film. And she's the most beautiful, buxom surgeon you've ever want to meet, by the way. And she realizes once the monster's loose, the only way to kill the monster is to create another monster that would be a killer, which I think there would be other ways. I think she's using that as an excuse to follow in her father's footsteps and make a monster of her own. So anyways, this guy Charles was the Baron's assistant. Kind of an older guy, a meek guy, but a smart guy, a scientist. He really likes Tanya, Lady Frankenstein. And Tanya knows this, but he's too meek and shy, so she kind of plays him for a fool, and she wants to use him in an experiment. Because another guy, young guy working at the castle, Thomas, he's kind of a slow adult, but very good looking. So she wants to put Charles, the scientist's brain, into Thomas's body so she can have a hot boyfriend who's also smart. This is her plan, and that will kill the monster. So it seems really convoluted and like she has her own agenda here. So anyways, she has to seduce Thomas. He's sitting on the bed. She strips completely naked, and she's making out with him. Charles smothers Thomas. They do the experiment, and she's making out with this creature now. Now the creature can talk. He's the good-looking Thomas with the smart brain in his head. And at the end, they're both naked, completely naked, on the bed, making love to each other, and I won't say what happens after that. There's also more blood than I expected. It's not gory or anything like that, but just more than I expected. For example, you see the monster at the beginning with his skull sawed open, and you see the brain sticking out of it. You know, it looks fake and everything, but just I wasn't expecting that. And then you see various body parts like organs floating in jars in the laboratory. There's a detective, and he starts to investigate the Baron's death. He wears a cape for some reason, but this is like the 1820s, so I guess that makes sense. And so it kind of goes, after the Baron is killed, it kind of rotates back and forth between what Tanya is up to and the detective interviewing the usual suspects to see who killed the Baron. The detective, by the way, is played by Mickey Hartigay, who was once married to Jane Mansfield. Also want to mention the music. The music's very weird. It's sort of this ambient soundtrack, which is kind of always in the background. You're kind of tuning in and out with like weird music and kind of gurgling and bubbling sound effects to it. Now you might think that I'm not going to give this a very high rating, but I had a good time with this film. It's well done. It looks good. And, the acting is kind of odd, some of it, and it's a little bit unrealistic dialogue, a little melodramatic at times. But it's a Frankenstein film. If you're a fan of those, I think you're going to get a kick out of this. I'm going to give this one 4 drops of blood out of 5. Now, what's on this disc? This is part of a larger box set by Severin. Let me show that to you. It's called Danza Macabra, Volume 1, the Italian Gothic collection. There are other films in here. This is the first one I watched, though. And this has English dubbed, or you can watch it in Italian with English subtitles. Now, normally, I would say dubbing is, sacrilegious, blasphemous, whatever you want to say. I usually never watch films that are dubbed. I did watch this one dubbed. I think they did a good job with it. Joseph Cotton's the only one speaking English, and everybody else, all the other ones are dubbed in English, but it's pretty good. And sometimes that weird dubbing voice gives it sort of a disembodied effect that makes it stranger, I think. So in this case, I made an exception. I watched the dub version. I know, it's terrible. There are 2 audio commentaries, which I did not listen to. There's a whole slew of extras. An interview with the woman who plays Lady Frankenstein, who's much better looking in the film than she is in the cover here, by the way. I do like the colorful, garish covers they use, the artwork they use. There's also an interview with, there's a video essay rather. There is a German documentary, it's about 45 minutes long, that features the director Mel Wells quite a bit. That's very informative. A lot of good extras. There are some scenes that are clothed scenes, meaning those scenes I mentioned where they're naked, and those scenes they're wearing clothes, or they cut it so you can't see the nudity. I guess they did that for censor purposes. There's a whole slew of other stuff. There's a video comic book of the entire film, and there are some trailers, TV spots, stuff like that. So where can you see Lady Frankenstein? Well, the good news is, if you want to check this out, it looks like it's on YouTube for free. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I did see it listed there under a couple of different YouTube channels. It's on the streaming service Screenbox, the other streaming service Tubi. You can rent this from Amazon, apparently for 99 cents if you want to. And you can also buy it. That box set is still available. You can buy this by itself, not this edition though. It's a different company and it's region B. So, you have a few options there if you want to see Lady Frankenstein. So feel free to leave a comment or suggestion down below. Would you like me to talk about some of the other films in that box set? Let me know. I would like to thank the following people who left comments since our last episode: Tina and Michael. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Leave a thumbs up. Don't leave a thumbs down. Subscribe would be great. Share this with your friends and neighbors. Last time I looked, we were 4 away from our new goal of 600 subscribers. Thanks so much for subscribing. Welcome to our 2 new subscribers since our last episode, Tony and Gordon. Thank you so much. Subscribing is free. Also free is follow us on Letterboxd. That's where we leave brief written reviews of other films we're watching. There's a link down below, Letterboxd, under the Kazdoy closet. Most recently, I posted a review of The Flash. You may or may not want to read that one. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate it. See you next time.